So, hi guys, and welcome to this webinar. Today we're talking about something a bit different. This is how you sort of marry your pharma ads and your paid media efforts on social. It is sort of a complex theme, and there's a lot of moving parts in this, and this is why I have my amazing and trusted colleague Mariana with me today. Hello,
Hi, Max.
Mariana. Great seeing you. You are the brain behind this, and I can't wait for you to take me through all of this. I will be asking you some questions along the way, but other than that, it's just you running the show because I know you are definitely an expert in this, or we all are at Copco, where we both work. We are this very social media savvy company. We work with social media every day. We know everything about culture on the social platforms. We enhance all the efforts for all our clients and so on. We have a lot of different clients. So, and a lot of the work we do is with pharma. So we know all about the do's and don'ts, how to get everything approved and so on. So we do it right in all the communication about this. We will be doing some of these webinars. This is the one about paid media. We will also be doing one about community management, and we'll also be doing one how you create content, and these will be on our website. When you're done seeing this, you can click on the next one. So as you can see here, I'm senior strategist here at Copco, and then Mariana, you're a strategist in the same team as me, and also, as said before, the brain behind this, and we're really looking forward to take you through all of this. As said before, we are the ones that sort of replace your slow existing social media agency, because we are the fast-paced social only team that pull you up at the seat at culture table at your audience. So Marianne, with enough said, I think I'll just let you take it from here, because this is the first slide in your presentation, and I think I'll let you explain it because I have questions. That number is high.
Exactly. And yes, I'm very, very happy to be here and to talk about this. And because as you mentioned, we work a lot with pharma, a lot with paid social campaigns on different social media channels. But besides that, we also work a lot with content production. So I'm just really excited to tap into how you can really maximize and marry the efforts in these two areas. So yes, the first number that I really wanted to talk about is that just within 2020, within 6 months, pharmaceutical brands invested more than $340 million on Facebook and Instagram in paid media, which is a great number, and it indicates the industry's recognition of these channels as powerful platforms to engage and reach with customers and people in the audience. Today, an astonishing number of 1 in 4 internet users are using social media to research their healthcare decisions. They do so to leverage on the vast amount of information that is out there, to seek advice, and to also connect with others on these different social media platforms. This indicates that there is a very thorough shift in consumer behavior, which makes it very important for pharmaceutical brands to tap into this digital landscape to meet their audience on an eye-to-eye level.
And actually, I think that number is even it's growing, because as I talked to Emilia, our colleague, about the whole community management part of this. And if you guys haven't seen it, it's one of the webinars available here at our website too. It is, I say, the number is growing in people reaching out, sharing in these communities and so on. That's why it's so important not to leave the comments, the real stories and so on, just leave them alone. You need to be active and replying to and connecting with your community. And then just what you're saying, Marianne, is that with social media and so on, we just see that number growing, that people are connecting with brands, and especially when we're talking pharma, because that's disorders, challenges, diseases, and so on. And it is really people crying out for information, help, and all of that.
Exactly.
Uh, so they need this both to sort of be advised, getting the real information, and also met on the same terms and on eye level in communication.
Exactly. I really think that it is becoming a starting point for all of us when it comes to wanting to learn more about a certain topic. And our health is now being different. So that means that people are using from TikTok to Google to Facebook, all kinds of social media channels, which creates this great opportunity for pharmaceutical brands to find out which platform they should be on and what kind of content they should be putting out there. Which actually leads me to the next point that we can see here is that a great deal of the sales contribution and the success that you can reach on these platforms depends on the creative quality that is put behind the content that you put out, especially in the paid ads. This very much indicates that people are out there and they're spending more and more time on social media, but there's also a fierce competition for their attention. And if you invest in creative and you ensure that the content that you are promoting to your audience is relevant, engaging, and also different from what everybody else is doing out there, yet still being in touch with your core brand, then that can add a very big part to your success and long-lasting results on these platforms. Especially when we look at also that most creative ads create 4 times more profitability as other ads that invest less in the creative aspect of the ads. And of course, this always brings up the question of how you should find this ratio between the efforts that you put behind your paid activation versus your creative quality. And we will get into this in a couple of minutes, but I just find this very, very interesting. And also all of these data shows that this is not something that you should undermine or underestimate, because there is a great potential investing also in the creative aspect of your ads, and it can generate this much more profitability and results. And the final number that I would like to show you, Mads, is that 65% of people would like brands to wow them and to surprise them with spectacular advertising and marketing on social media platforms. As we discussed, people and all of us, we are spending more and more time in these landscapes, in these environments, and we are expecting brands to step up their game, to don't take it for granted that we are there and it is good enough to put out any kind of content that we can almost predict or expect. Because when brands take the effort and the initiative to go the extra mile and to really convey information and insights and guidelines and tools that can make a difference in our lives, that goes a long way.
I completely agree, because the content needs to be it needs to resonate in such a high degree, especially when we're talking challenge pharma diseases and so on. We have the audiences where they need to look at this content and say, this brand gets me, they get my situation, my challenges, and all of that, and that's why, yeah, it resonates with me. That's why I choose them, because they see me as I am, and they meet me on the same terms, and don't create this, how you say, where they're apart as a company and patient, but on the same terms, and in the communication that's resonating, it's compassionate, and it is not all about just selling.
Exactly. I completely agree. And on that note, I would like to move forward, because that is exactly the situation that a lot of brands, especially pharmaceutical brands, can find themselves in. And that paid social is a very powerful tool. But advertisers should also focus more on testing the marketing creative, because that can also further improve and optimize their paid social efforts. So these two pillars very much go hand in hand. And to give an example, I would like to briefly show 2 campaigns where we invested heavily in the creative quality and the content itself, besides the paid media planning. That was, of course, very thoroughly performed and planned. But also the creative activation was very much curated and tailored to the goal of the campaign at issue. We did so not just because we were very passionate about this project, but also because multiple researches show that highly creative awarded campaigns have a 13 times higher share of voice efficiency than not creatively awarded ones. And then, of course, we can take into account that being awarded also means that, for example, the campaign was submitted for an award application, but it also very much indicates that those ads that take this extra mile and invest in the creative storytelling and tap into the understanding and the mindset of the target audience can really, really go a long way, and can allow the brand to benefit from the content production and to also further leverage on it, or to even expand this universe, and can really create a long-lasting vehicle for the brand on social media. And the first campaign that I would like to show you in a bit more detail is called Diabetes Besties. Perhaps some of you out there who are viewing these webinars have already seen this on YouTube or different social media channels. It is personally one of my favorite ones because it taps into such a relevant issue that there are about 1.5 million children living with type 1 diabetes globally, yet there is not enough educational material out there. So our goal was to create a cartoon series that really breaks down the important messages and everything that is there to know about type 1 diabetes and what it means to live with it. And when we look at the creative, there is definitely a high potential there, which was also reflected in the paid results. So you can see that one of the campaigns that we run with this content reached 100% of the targeted audience within only 3 weeks, with an over 1.7 million people watching the full episodes on social. And that being said, this is a very high number because we're talking about a very niche topic. So I just really wanted us to take a moment and take some inspiration from it, because I think it can really help us sparkle and think about new ways when we are thinking about putting out content on social media.
And I just want to emphasize your recommendation, because even though maybe the topic, the theme of this isn't relevant for who you are or your daily life, but just my strongest recommendation is to find Diabetes Besties on YouTube, wherever. Just search for it and you will see it, and you will fall in love like we all did with these characters immediately. And we haven't even mentioned the jingle yet that will
Exactly.
get stuck in your head. It's good. It's even better than Baby Shark and everything else out
Completely
there.
agree. So on that hook, I would like to just move on to the next campaign that I wanted to bring in here as inspiration, and to really just elaborate on those issues that we have been discussing so far. And that was a campaign that we created together with the obesity department of Novo Nordisk that took inspiration from the Groundhog Day movie. And some of you may know this movie, or hopefully a lot of you, because it is a very interesting one. But the creative concept behind this campaign was to again understand what it feels like to really start one's weight management journey, and what are those personal thoughts and considerations and challenges that we all face when it comes to taking that first step into making a change, a lasting change in our lifestyle. And this campaign had a very more emotional and more human storytelling to it. And that is why I wanted to show it to you, that campaigns that leverage on this emotional and empathetical approach, instead of a more rational or more practical overview, can lead to benefits, because they achieve, for example, a 9% higher effectiveness in sales, and people also tend to recall it much better. And it also leads to a stronger impact when it comes to word of mouth, organic sharing, and people just having conversations and discussions around the topic. So our feedback was definitely very positive, and it was great to see how positively the whole community welcomed this piece of content.
And how did it do to your expectations? Because to me, it's not. We know that Diabetes Besties, at least it was. We had expectations. We knew we know it's great, and it exceeded everything that we thought it would reach. How did it go with Break the Weight Cycle?
Yes, this campaign reached more than 10 million views on social, and it was promoted on Facebook and Instagram. But this number is very high, and especially when it comes to the unique link clicks, more than 200,000 unique link clicks to the relevant landing page, together with the post engagements that we generated, is a very strong and positive performance. I remember also when we handled community management for this campaign, and besides these numbers that speaks for themselves, how much people interacted and took the next step and went to the landing page, we could also see that it hit a very positive tone within the audience, and they felt supported and encouraged to learn more. But when we look all of this data and input and inspiration out there, it really leads us to this dilemma of splitting our investments at the end of the day between paid and creative. And we fully understand this. And this is a big question, because so how can we split the budget between content and paid promotion?
That is a good question, because maybe is it 80-20? Is it 50-50? Is it, and I we don't even think, we know that a lot get this, how you say, split a bit skewed. It is that yeah, we can do whatever regarding content, and we can sort of pay our way to the audience, or we hope that our content is so strong that we don't have to use paid and live organically. But it's sort of two falses to one truth. And we, of course, at here at Copco, have a very strong recommendation based on all the knowledge that we have regarding this split. So, Marianne, will you reveal the number?
Exactly. So what we're suggesting is that advertisers must prioritize testing, marketing, creative as targeting options shrink. And this is the starting point to figure out what is that split that works for you. And we have a recommendation that can guide you as a starting point, and what is that rule of thumb that can really help you find what works best for you. But I really wanted to emphasize here is that paid media is a very powerful tool. It can really help to emphasize and increase the results from a good creative content. But it is also a landscape where the rules of the game are changing almost on a daily basis. New targeting optimizations, new ad formats on new platforms are coming on a regular basis, which also makes this a very interesting field. But it also means that us advertisers must keep in mind that we need to test how these different options and these different capabilities play out for our own brand, for our own audience. So what do we do? Here at Copco, we are very often find ourselves when we have to consider this question, how should we consult, whether it's about investing in creative or investing in paid efforts? And to really reach the best success on social media platforms, we recommend doing both, and we have experience in doing both. Because also when we look at the data that is out there in a larger context, studies show that as a starting point, considering a 60-40 budget split between content creation and paid distribution is very efficient. The reason for that is that creative, as we have discussed also earlier in this webinar, still makes up a big portion of the success of advertising nowadays, in particular 47%. But there are also other factors that we could tap into and that it's very, very efficient and beneficial to prioritize. One of them is reach, which have been found to make up 22% of the advertising performance and the success rate generated from the campaigns, which together with recency and targeting makes up about 40% of the success criteria that we can look at. And I know these are a lot of numbers, and you might be like, 47, 22, what is going on? And that is exactly why we suggest the starting point of the 60-40 split between 60% focusing on creative investments and tailoring content that really allows you to communicate your messaging, your narrative, and allows you to get closer and build closer connections with your audience. And besides that, it's also very important that you also have a substantial and solid foundation when it comes to paid media advertising, so you can make sure that that content is being seen by the right people. And when you do this, then you do optimization. And when you have been testing these efforts on a time scale, which can of course depend on the audience that you're talking to, as well as the special niche within the pharmaceutical industry that you're in, we strongly recommend starting optimizing and tailoring this share that works best for you in particular, because that will allow you to really dedicate your efforts to that activation that gives you the best success in the long run.
Because we also know, and due to the way that we work here at Copco, we know, and Marianne, you and I especially as strategists know that that is where it starts, with the insight, the edge, the how to say, we find the problem that we need to solve, and then we create the foundation that fosters the creative work, and then we need to make the creative work come to life, and get that reach, and make sure that we reach the audience, the relevant audience for everything that we're doing. Because yeah, the content can be great, but that paid and distribution strategy and efforts needs to be made when you're doing campaigns like this.
Exactly. I fully agree with your point, Mes. And when it comes to optimization, I just want to emphasize that it doesn't just mean optimizing once the campaign is over and your results are fully in and analyzed, but it also means an ongoing optimization. Social media is a very active landscape. And it is very important that you are staying in touch with your campaign and staying close to its performance and monitoring the audiences, because that exactly gives you these kind of insights that you also highlighted, that we rely a lot on, and can really allow us to further optimize this split between creative and paid media efforts. Okay, so how to make sure that your audience sees the content in this slide? The good news is that your content can reach your target audience in many different ways. So there's no one simple question. Of course, a very often quoted answer is it depends. But the truth is that the bad news is also that your content can reach your target audience in many different ways. And that is where I think the nitty-gritty details of paid media and the magic behind it can really come to life and can really make a difference. Because when we look at the landscape, it's very important to be mindful and have a clear understanding of the difference between the pull and push efforts of your audience and just the behaviors that go along with it. Because when we look at pull media and you look at your efforts from this strategic perspective, it's important to keep in mind that there are also people out there who are actively looking for something, a piece of information, advice, learning, more tutorials or guidelines about certain health-related issues and topics. And it is really a great opportunity for you to be there and to really publish content that is easy to be discovered, that is easy to be accessed, because that can help your brand to stand out and be a relevant thought leader and a relevant player in this field. And this includes activities of organic social media content, as well as SEO optimizations and, for example, social listening. So you have a close understanding of what is it that people are looking for, what is it that they're interested in. On the other end, it's also important to make sure that it is worthwhile for people to find you. Because when we look at the push end of this system, people are not actively looking for everything all the time. So there are some things that they're looking for, and there are some things that they may not be looking for. But this is where promoting high quality content can help you to increase your share of voice, tap into new audiences, and to really expand the network and the brand awareness of your efforts on social media. And this is true for all the key relevant social media platforms. So let it be from Instagram to Meta to Pinterest to LinkedIn. But as today, I really would like to us to focus on what are those platforms that we find very, very interesting when it comes to paid media efforts for pharmaceutical brands. My choice definitely falls on LinkedIn and Meta. The reason for that is because internal data about LinkedIn shows that there was a 30% year-over-year increase in healthcare conversations around topics such as medicine, health, wellness, and insurance. And beyond this, the website, the platform is also home to 10 million healthcare professionals. And that is a very big opportunity for the brands out there. And it is very important to know how to find this relevant audience on the platform and to offer content and information that is relevant for them. And that is where, based on our experience and the projects that we have been working on, the recommendation is to have an approach that has multiple legs, that relies on multiple pillars and approaches, because that can allow you to really map out your target audience and cover the bases from all angles. One of the approaches that we recommend is to collect all the relevant job titles that are related to your target audience. LinkedIn offers a wide list of job titles, so it's really worth while taking the time and the effort to make a whole list and cover all those titles that can be relevant for your campaign. Besides job titles, there's also an opportunity to map out member skills. And skills in particular are a very powerful aspect of LinkedIn, because you can target people and professionals specialized in certain areas and certain academic fields. For example, when we talk about a healthcare professional audience, endocrine surgery, or ophthalmology. Besides this, we also recommend to enhance your efforts and paid audience targeting, including degrees and fields of study. And of course, this can depend on whether you want to also include people who are still studying, then perhaps job titles are less relevant to you. But if you're already targeting practicing professionals, we strongly recommend also including this, so you can cover people who may not be updating their job titles as frequently as their degrees and fields of study, but still hold a relevant background in the field that you want to talk about. And last but very not least, we have seen great results coming from targeting also member groups and relevant member groups. And when it comes to this, again, it is very worthwhile to map out an audience in LinkedIn Ads Manager and to really explore what are those member groups that are relevant for the professionals of your target audience. For example, there are member groups that tap into special education within healthcare and therapy ideas, which can really be a spot on and can add an extra layer to your targeting.
Marianne, when you look at these, or when you do this, do you combine all four of them? Do you single them out, or how does it work when you do the paid? Because I can sense that, or how to say, my perception of this would be that if you combine all of these, then you end up with a very niche, a very targeted audience. So do you use all four at the same time, or is it more individually?
There are different options for it, and I would say it depends, because there is an opportunity to combine these with an and parameter, and there are also options to combine them with an or parameter. So it really depends on who is it that you want to target. And when you build these audiences on LinkedIn, you can also see the estimated number of people who are within this audience. So you can keep a close eye on how big is the audience based on using, for example, job titles and member skills. If you feel like that the audience that you would like to reach is better described with those parameters, and if it's large enough and you feel like that this covers who really I want to reach, then I would suggest there's no need to overcomplicate the targeting, but it is very useful to check what are those opportunities and to find that combination that allows you to maximize your goal with the campaign the best way.
Okay. Yeah, because it also, of course, it depends on whether we're going for broad awareness. Is it emphasizing the interest? Is there an action we want them to do, and so on, the classic funnel that we want to pull the target audience through, or depending on which phase you want them to enter.
Exactly.
So.
And when it comes to Meta, 80% of people turn to social media for health information, with Meta being one of the leading destinations. And of course, I think we can have a long discussion around why this might be the case. It may come from the fact that Meta has been a part of people's lives for many, many years, and people really consider it almost as a search engine to look for more information about certain topics, and especially to seek advice and opinions from others who may have experienced somewhat similar situations to them. But it also shows that Meta is a platform that pharmaceutical brands can and should consider to stay close to people who are interested in this kind of topic. So how can we reach the relevant audience despite the targeting limitations that Meta has been rolling out in the past time period? One of the main ones that I think a lot of us in the advertising world have spent a lot of hours thinking about and just scratching our heads, thinking about, okay, so what does this mean? How can we work around this? How does this change the tactics that we should be focusing on? Because when we replace narrow targeting with broad targeting, the data shows that 66% of videos maintained or improved their performance against benchmarks when shown to a broader audience, and 70% of mobile optimized assets maintained or even improved. I think these numbers very much indicate that there is a strong potential in giving more room and more control to the algorithm that is built in the platform, and to really allow it to use broad targeting based on age, location, and gender to find that audience group who resonates with your content. Because targeting broadly essentially means that you mostly relying on the platform's delivery system. And it's very important to keep in mind that the algorithm has access to a huge amount of data, consumer behaviors, and also past metrics about how a certain user reacted with different kinds of pieces of content, different pieces of call to actions and advertising. So, and this data is not necessarily something, or it would be something that you would have to spend countless hours to get access to. Therefore, it can really save you time and effort to utilize the capabilities built in the platform and to leverage on this understanding and insights about consumer behavior to find those prospects within the platform. So the first ingredient that we would like to highlight in our recipe for you when it comes to targeting on Meta is broad targeting. As I mentioned, this means that you give control to the algorithm to target people based on their location, gender, and age. This may not seem like a lot of components to begin with, but data shows that this targeting can lead to really successful results on the platform. One of them is that 12%, you can save 12% on cost per action, because broad targeting makes it more efficient. And it can also lead to 113% higher return on ad spend than using lookalike audiences, which may have been a commonly used approach in the past to expand on your audience or to find new people who might be also interested in the content. But broad targeting can really pay off in the long run. So we really encourage you to start testing it and really test how it can be beneficial to your brand and your paid efforts on the platform. The next component and the next tactic that I would like to highlight is custom audiences, which basically means that we encourage leveraging on the data that you have of your audience, let it be newsletter subscribers, website visitors, or potential leads. What I mean by it is that when you use a full funnel approach, you can consider building up an audience group who understands the values and your point. And then you can filter out people who do not engage with your content versus people who do engage with your content. And then you can push and promote further content to those people who have engaged with certain messaging and certain pieces of content further higher up in the funnel. The reason why we suggest considering this in certain cases is because it can allow you to optimize budget spending and ensure that the budget is spent on traffic and conversion for those people who have already engaged and who have a higher likelihood of actually taking that step and visiting your landing page or converting on your sales activation. Besides the funnel approach, when it comes to custom audiences, I also would like us to take a moment and consider newsletters. I think all of us are subscribed to quite a lot of newsletters, and while it may vary how many of them you read on a daily basis, as a brand, it can be a very beneficial and useful aspect to leverage on that audience who has already expressed that they are interested in your brand, who have already expressed that they are interested and keen on learning more from you and hearing more about your insights. And besides this, depending, of course, also on your strategies and offerings, both on social media and your digital landscape, but you can also consider leveraging leads. Utilizing these leads that you have compiled in various activations, let it be website, webinar signups, or people who have downloaded for perhaps different white papers or documents that you have created, can allow you to build an audience based on these interactions and to target them with specific offers that can further build on this collaboration and engagement that you have already started.
I just need to sort of emphasize this one, because we've seen, and I know especially on some of the campaigns we worked on, Mariana, we've seen a lot of examples of people forgetting the sort of the term low hanging fruits of people who already shown interest in your brand, product, and so on. That you always start from scratch when creating these audiences. You actually have people who've shown a genuine interest in whatever you're communicating, selling, promoting, and so on. But when we start when we start the campaigns, there is a strong tendency within the industry to keep forgetting that these exist and that we are allowed to use them and leverage that. They've at some, as you said, we've signed up to a lot of newsletters through our time, and sometimes read them, sometimes we don't. But at some point, we show a genuine interest. So let's leverage that in the best way. So never forget about the ones that already exist, and then we build on top of that with the paid efforts.
I completely agree, and I think it doesn't have to be taken as a pressure that you always have to target or leverage on those leads. But as you mentioned, that it's very important that at least you always consider whether this particular project or objective that you're working on is something where that could be relevant or not. So besides that, another approach that we do want to take a moment to still keep in mind, because it's not actually gone and not completely forgotten, is narrow targeting. I know I have just talked about broad targeting, and I do stand by it. But besides that, it's also very important to have this multifaceted approach when it comes to finding the best targeting approach on Meta, because you can still use narrow targeting cleverly, and you can still use it as an add-on in addition to broad targeting and other approaches in your Meta promotion strategy. Because while broad targeting is preferred by the Meta platform itself, you can think beyond. And for example, look for people who are interested in health, because you are allowed to target people based on their behavior, for example, mobile users or purchase behavior or traveling history, or also when it comes to different life stages. If you have, let's say that an educational material that is very relevant for new parents, then it is a very good a point and an approach to consider also building a narrow audience that is built on new parents, for who your content and landing page and all your information can be super relevant. Besides this, if your campaign is more related to areas of interest, while the available list of areas of interest on Meta have been shortened or have been updated, and that is why I always advise to stay close to the available areas of interest on Ads Manager. And it is always important to really go in and build your audience within the platform. But there are still areas of interest that you can leverage on. And what we do at Capco when we build campaigns, we always have a very creative and open-minded approach to this, because this is where you can leverage on insights, and this is where you can leverage on consumer behavior, for example, on insights that you may gain from community management, or insights that you may have also utilized in your creative content creation. So there are multiple ways to really make sure that all your efforts are aligned and translated to that consumer behavior that is key for your success.
And as strategists, we just live for this, because it all starts there. We're so curious about who we're talking to, how do they act, how do they behave, what are the interest points, the passion points, and so on, because then we can do this in absolutely the best way. So it always starts with the insight to who we're talking to, and that's why we can create the content that resonates in absolutely the best way. And this is where, when we combine this with this paid efforts, we just nail it every time.
Exactly. We have seen great results from combining also curated creative as well as broad targeting and the narrow targeting. So I really would like to emphasize that it is all a matter of a layered approach. There's no one size fits all, and there's no one quick solution, but it is really worthwhile to take the effort to really build a strategy and an understanding around your audience and how you can best communicate your goals to them on social. And on that note, the last approach that I would like to highlight is lookalike audiences, because it is an aspect that you should consider on Meta, but it is very important that you always use a precise seed audience. So when you use this, I strongly recommend that you pay a close attention to the campaign, that you have a paid specialist team who's monitoring and testing if the algorithm is actually finding the people who are likely to perform the same actions as your seed audience. So for example, here you can use as a seed audience certain people who have visited a very specific article on your landing page that you know that is very closely related to what you're talking about. Because of course, at the end of the day, our goal is to reach as many people as possible who are as interested in the topic as possible. And that is why I really wanted to make sure that we include it here, but with a dash of salt and making sure that you have the right seed audience to begin with. And I understand that after all this information, considerations, and as well as numbers, you may feel like a little bit overwhelmed, and you may feel like, all right, I really would like to have a cup of coffee and just take a moment to take this all in. And I fully understand that. But to really leave you with something hands-on and practical, here's how you can create a synergy between both your paid efforts as well as your creative efforts. The first step that I would like to recommend is to outline your target audience. So to really have a close and solid understanding of who are those people who you want to reach on social media. And here it's important to distinguish your organic efforts and your paid efforts. When you run paid media campaigns, probably you have a specific goal in mind, a specific duration and group of people, perhaps even within your broader organic audience. So just to make sure that you know for sure who is it that you want to reach. And once you have this, define the social media channels that you want to be present on and invest your paid media efforts in. Because now you have an understanding of who is it that you want to talk to, but now you have to find the right channels of how to reach those people efficiently. And this is where you can also take into account previous campaigns and leverage on those reports. We always look at previous results and achievements from campaigns. So if we have a campaign that, for example, targets a similar audience that we have had a previous campaign with, then it is really useful to look at those learnings and observations to define which are those channels that we really want to use in the particular campaign. Because once you have this, then you can start mapping out what your audience is looking for on those particular channels. This is how you can make sure that your content is discoverable and caters for the interest points of your audience on those particular platforms. The reason why this is important, it's not just to find that creative concept and storytelling and approach that you would like to implement in the creative production, but also because it can allow you to have a very clear understanding of what is that content mix that you as a strategist, as a paid media strategist, would like to put out and really invest your efforts in. Because once you have all of these components together, this is basically the foundation that you can use to level up an exposure using paid media efforts. Because pulling people in through the content is very relevant, but this is where you can make it come to life and make it go viral, hopefully, on the platforms that you are targeting. And the very last but not least piece of advice that I would like to highlight here based on all of this is to really keep in mind that these are wheels of push and pull of synergy, and they're always in motion. They're never still. So that's what makes it very interesting. But that also means that with creative top-notch content, you can keep these wheels running in a much more smooth way. And you can also leverage on results that are much more efficient and much closer to your business and social media goals in general.
Exactly. And just regarding the first two ones where you said outline your target audience, completely agree that that's where everything starts. And especially with the next one where we define the social media channels, it's all about where that audience is. Because we also seen some pretty grim examples of brands just following the latest trends and joining a new platform or trending platform because that's what everybody else is doing, without making sure that the how you say the relevant audience actually is on that platform. So when you do that as a brand, you just end up yelling in an empty room, which is why we define the audience and then we find out where they are and then we follow the rest of this list to come out with the absolutely best result.
Exactly. And just to get back to my previous point, all of these steps, when followed on a regular and a systematic basis, can also give you all of that understanding and context around that ratio that you should split your efforts according to. because once you make sure that all of these pieces are in place, that you can know that you check the boxes. So it's the results that you're seeing is not because your targeting was not on point. Probably it was. And then you can compare how your paid media efforts and creative efforts paid off, so you can further leverage on your strategy and make sure that you have the right split in place.
Was that the golden nuggets? The end of all the information?
Exactly. And I would like to leave with two quotes that I think phrase the quintessential essence of all of this that I really wanted to share with you today, is that creativity involves breaking out of expected patterns in order to look at things in a different way. And I think this is a very nice and useful reminder when it comes to creating social media campaigns on a regular basis, because it is very important to always keep in mind that it's great when there's a campaign that performed really well and reached all the results that we want to, but it is always very important to leverage on what's worked, but also keep testing, keep pushing, keep innovating, so you are not getting stuck in something that may have worked. So you can really ensure that you're staying fresh and you keep meeting your customers' expectations in delivering something new and worthwhile for them to keep coming back and keep following and engaging with your brand on social media.
Because on social media, there's no resting on laurels.
Exactly.
It's so fast.
Exactly. It really does. And also because we all know that the noise and the competition is so fierce on social media. And that is why I wanted to leave you with this piece of advice and a post-it that I very much use in my daily work, is that investing in breaking through this noise can really help you to share your to increase your share of voice and to provide audiences with both new and searchable content, because then you have best of both worlds, and you make sure that you're in close touch and can really build further engagement with both people who are already in touch with your brand and including also people who are new to your audience.
I want that posted. And beautiful handwriting, by the way.
I will make sure to
If
get it to you.
that's a real picture of the post.
I will make sure to get it to you.
So that was it, or that was a lot. Very valuable. So if you guys want to know more, here you have all the details about Copco, the most social savvy agency probably in the world. We're looking forward to your call. Just write us email, give us a call. We'll pick up the phone and then we take it from there. So now you know how to do paid social media regarding pharma and how to do it right. So give us a call. You'll talk to me, Mariana. Thank you so much for taking us through this. Really looking forward to do a lot of more campaigns like this and really nail it and hit it out the park, because that's what we do here at Copco. So see you the next time. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you for having me. See you.